Hoi hoi, everybody! Phoenix Wright, Days Attorney, here we are. Final trial day. Probably still not finishing it quite today, but you never know. We'll see how it goes, yeah? Lots of stuff is going on, so much that I have trouble to summarize it all. I'll try to get the beats. We know now that Damon Gant is blackmailing Lana Skye somehow into taking the blame for the murder of what's-his-face, Bruce Goodman, but she's trying to really hard convince the court that she's the guilty party, and we are fighting tooth and nail to find any contradictions to, break her claims. Right now we're working the SL9 case of all things, which has gotten messier and messier. We have determined that at some point it was Neil, yeah, it says the name right there, sorry, I blanked out on which Marshall was which. It was Neil Marshall who had the knife out, apparently, and standing over Joe Dark, he had the knife from the prosecutor's trophy. That's the implication, anyway. There was a weird shape in the picture that, Emma drew. This is what Emma saw. She drew the logo of the Blue Badger there, but that was an impossibility. After quite the mini-game, we determined that what she saw was this jar in a bizarre position. Why is that relevant? Well, I'm glad you asked, because that's what we are in the middle of explaining, as I do believe we have just figured out what the real murder weapon is. Go ahead, Phoenix. Explain it. Oh, actually, sorry. Give me just a second. Amateur mistake right there. Never start recording Phoenix Wright without a glass of water ready to go. Now you may proceed, Monsieur Wright. It is these two facts that reveal what actually transpired. You see, the struggle between Dark and Marshall did not take place in Lana Skye's office. It happened on the other side of the room, in Chief Gant's office. Are you implying the murderer moved the victim's body from Damon Gant's office to Lana Skye's office? I don't remember. Did I really? Was it? I don't remember. I thought I was sure we were going with the jar was the actual murder weapon that knocked out Neil Marshall. But did we really go on about where the murder happened? I actually completely forget. Wow, that's how bad I am sometimes with these facts. Okay, but that's also a good point, I guess. If she saw, if Emma saw the freaking jar, then the jar was next to those guys, and they would have had to have been on the other side of the room. Yeah, okay. That's also an angle to follow, but I was actually thinking that the jar was the murder weapon. We'll see if we can work that in eventually. Let's carry on. From Damon Gant's office to Lana Skye's office? Yes. Why would he do that? There's no reason. Exactly. Huh? If there wasn't a reason, he wouldn't have gone through the trouble. The only logical conclusion is that there was a reason. Do you know what that reason was, Mr. Wright? Ooh, that's not good. It's going dark. Apparently Phoenix knows what's going on, but as you can tell, I'm a little out of the loop again. Good lord. I finally figured it out. So this is why Lana tried to stop the trial. It's too late to quit now, though. Please recall the witness's testimony. She said she knocked away the man who was holding up the knife. In the next instant, the jar was hit and flew through the air. Now tell me, what could have sent the jar flying? That would have to have been the impact the man made when he was knocked into the wall. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may draw your attention to this picture once more. If the man was knocked in the direction of the shelf the jar was sitting on, what would he have hit? The shelf with the jar on it, I guess. Oh!
The suit of armor! Holding a very sharp and dangerous-looking sword.
Whoa, wait, really? That's too dark because that's implying that Emma killed him by accidentally knocking him into the sword? I was leaning on that sword really hard in previous episodes, but now I don't feel so great about that. I did not expect this turnaround. Yes. And since the man who was knocked into the armor was carrying a broken knife, he would have had to have been Neil Marshall, wielding the King of Prosecutors trophy.
No! Mr. Wright, you can't be thinking.
Yes. There is another possibility of what actually transpired in that room.
Another possibility?
Of course the perpetrator would have had no idea, but nevertheless... Oh, that was the wrong implication, Ivalik. Of course the perpetrator would have had no idea, but nevertheless... That was the proper intonation there, sorry. I didn't... Some of those perils when you're, like, blind reading stuff like this. But I know exactly what Phoenix is feeling here, because I agree, this is not good. I don't know if I can go through with this.
Mr. Wright?
What's the matter?
If events took place as the defense theorizes, then the outcome is obvious. In that moment, assuming the man Emma Skye knocked away was actually Prosecutor Neil Marshall. Oof.
You mean Mr. Marshall died because of me? No! Okay, but yes, now I see as well what what Phoenix was saying when he understands why Lana is blackmailed so hard. It's not that Lana's in danger. It's that Emma has been in danger of being implicated for Neil Marshall's death. And Lana knows this and has been covering it up, and presumably Gant knows it as well, and that's what he's holding over Lana. Oh, that's dark, but also brilliant. Good lord, this took a turn. I wasn't ready for this today, honestly. I was just like, yeah, and then like Gant walked in and smashed his head over with a jar on the head or something. Like that's what I thought we were going for. But the truth, if this is indeed where this is going, is a fair bit darker, yes? Oy, 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 oy. Let's carry on.
I never imagined her testimony would lead to this. So it was the witness who took the victim's life, and then proved so with her own testimony. This is unprecedented.
What? What are you saying? See, I knew that Lana would not take this lying down after all, especially if she knows that this is what happened. I'm sorry, Miss Skye, but given the circumstances, Joe Dock murdered Prosecutor Marshall. How can you think it was Emma? How dare you try to pin the crime on her? Oh, wow, look at her. I know, of course this is driving her nuts, but, like, it's still crazy to see.
Imagine that coming from you. If you recall, it was you who admitted to forging evidence 2 years ago. The reason you moved Prosecutor Marshall's body was to keep anyone else from finding out about what Emma did, wasn't it? I assure you, Mr. Edgeworth, I have no idea what you're talking about. If you hope to have anyone believe your insane allegations, I'm afraid you're gonna have to have proof. Tell me, do you have any conclusive evidence that proves my sister killed Neil Marshall? Evidence? I'm willing to bet you don't. Yes, it certainly would be difficult to prove this with evidence. If we don't have evidence, then we'll have to rely on testimony. I'm afraid that won't work in this case. Both parties involved in the incident are dead.
We certainly can't get dead people to testify. This has all been a wild goose chase from the beginning.
Which has also almost ruined Emma, apparently. Unless it's not a wild goose chase, but it might still ruin Emma. Poor Emma. I feel so bad for those two, Emma and Lana, right now. Even though the truth come out, it's still like, yikes. Let's see what Edgeworth has got cooking. Touché, Miss Skye. Of course, that only leaves us with one possibility.
You mean there's still another possibility?
What do you mean, Mr. Edgeworth? I mean the possibility that the victim has left us a message. For better or for worse, Mr. Marshall did not die instantly. He may have left behind the name of the person who took his life. In one manner or another. That's impossible. Well, Mr. Wright, this is the only possibility left to you. A message from the deceased. Does such a message exist?
I've got to think back to the court record.
Okay, let's go back because what the heck? A message from the deceased. Okay, let's try and focus on just items that involve SL9, so I don't get distracted by, like, this dancing moron. Ah, you silly, silly goose, you almost tripped me up. Oh no, I'm distracted by it, Dory. Okay, back up, back up. Let's see what Phoenix says still before I start, because I don't know what they're talking about right now.
The real murderer's name that the victim may have left behind
is in the evidence or doesn't exist. It's okay, so I can't commit yet. Now let's see.
King of prosecutors. The names of past recipients are etched on the plate. Manfred von Karma's name appears here too. How ironic.
That's a fun detail, I forgot about that. But yeah, of course, he was a very good prosecutor, I guess. At least appeared to be one, so of course he would have gotten this trophy at some point, you know. Didn't seem anything like... Manfred von Karma was the killer. There we go, we can pin 2 crimes on him. Fantastic. Probably not. This one? 221 SL9. You know, I can't quite remember what this in the end implied, but I guess it was Goodman's note to remember to pick up SL9 evidence on that day? Was that what that all related to? Okay, here we go. This is from SL9. Let's see now.
SL9 is written on a small tag attached to the knife. It was the weapon used in that incident 2 years ago, and has known many victims.
Right, okay. You know what's crazy is that this is also upending the obvious thing I was going for earlier, which is that Joe Dark was framed. Really, it's entirely possible that Joe Dark really was the killer after all then, honestly. And it just turns out that this one killing wasn't his work, but like all the others could be. You know, I was trying to
go crazy and imagine that everything had been framed on him, like the real killer was someone completely else, but it's looking more like, yeah, interesting. Here's another SL9 evidence thingy. These are all nothing from SL9, so I don't think we'd throw those out. Let's look at this glove. SL911 is written on the tag. It seems this is more evidence from that incident. Okay, that's all we had to say. No writing here, I don't see. Hold on. Yeah, okay, hold on. The jar. Let's see now. The jar has no bottom, so the hole goes right through. I wonder if it's really a jar or some kind of weird telescope. Right, there was that, and let's see. The dark red stains must be blood traces from the incident 2 years ago. Only the fragment found in Chief Gant's office still has lines remaining on it. I don't know. Except, you know, I guess... I don't know. That kind of looks like... You know, that kind of looks like the beginnings of a letter M, you know? Assuming it was Emma. And that'd be amazing, because remember way back in case number 2? There was the false writing in blood that pinned the crime on Maya. So what if there was an actual real one that pins the crime on Emma with this blood writing? I just thought that was a blood smear, but yeah, okay, like what else would he be writing with if he just got like shanked? Not like he had a pen on him. Or is it this piece of cloth? I don't know. But here's the thing, we don't really have... It's this cloth, which probably involves SL9. It's the evidence list with the picture. And, no, that's Emma's drawing. I guess this photo kind of counts, but that's before the murder, even, so... Then there's the jar, the glove, and the knife, and the trophy, and that's everything from SL9. Do we go with that jar and the blood smears on it? Go big or go home, they say. Let's try. This message from the deceased is already in our possession. Mr. Wright, will you stop at nothing to prove my sister a murderer?
Do not be mistaken, Miss Skye. Our purpose is not to accuse Emma of any crime. There is only one thing we seek. The truth.
Also, check out how Edgeworth is just like, that's what we're doing. So he is totally on board the justice system now. The idea that we are both working together in a debate, a kind of a game of sorts, like competing against each other, but the ultimate goal is now for him as well to get to the truth. And that's great. Super sick plot development for this guy right here.
No matter how painful it may be.
Now then, Mr. Wright, please show us the piece of evidence that conveys a message from the deceased.
Oh boy. But it does make, like, that is a weird squiggle, that blood there. It's not like a spatter. So could we? I bet, you know, if we get a chance, we could maybe dust it. We could get, like, a fingerprint trail from him there, maybe? You know, like the missing gaps on the letters? I don't know. It's a crazy ideas here. Let's go with that. Let's see what happens. This is the message left by the deceased.
This is that blue badger from before, right? Oh, is he going to just speak the killer's name?
If that thing could, I'm sure it would.
Looks like everyone's forgotten this is just a jar. See, I was like, hold on. I thought, but there's no way I pressed the wrong item. So that's just a dumb gag that everyone's so, like, fooled by this jar. Okay, that's pretty funny. I'll take that. A message was left here, on the surface of this jar.
What do you mean?
If you look closely, you can see a faint trail of blood on this jar.
It looks like someone wiped the blood away.
Yes, but notice. For some reason, the blood on some of the fragments was not wiped away.
Yes, there is a line here, drawn in blood.
Oh, my goodness! I wonder if Gant was holding on to this because this proves Emma as the killer, which means this is what Gant can use as leverage on Lana? Oh my goodness, that would explain so much. Man, this is Byzantine, the plot we're dealing with here. I feel out of my league.
So what you're saying is these dots were once lines?
Prosecutor Marshall did not die instantly. He used the few precious moments left to him to leave behind a message.
One that someone apparently wiped away. But blood must have seeped into the jar where the lines changed directions.
Precisely so. All we need to do is connect these points, and the victim's message will become apparent.
No!
Mr. Wright, what kind of message did the victim leave for us?
Your Honor, I believe these bloodstains will reveal to us the answer.
So we gotta connect dots now? Is this gonna be a minigame?
I've got to connect these dots to make letters. There's only one thing the victim would have written given the circumstances. His murderer's name.
Which would be Emma. Okay,
let's see if I can do this. I can kind of see the letters now, actually, now that they're calling it out. Oh, you can't connect this one? I guess it's a little too tricky, so they leave that there. However, like so. This seems a little conjecture-y, though, so I'm not 100% sure if you could get away with this in an actual court. Like, this seems a little bit like leaps of logic. If'n you ask me, but sure, let's do it. Well, I always was better at connect the dots than I was at whatever that 3D puzzle spinny thing was, so I'm glad I got that done at least. Let's... It's a defense attorney's duty to prove their client's innocence. That's why all I've been thinking about is saving Lana. After all my efforts, I never thought it would turn out like this.
Emma. So this is the final message Prosecutor Marshall left behind.
Of all people, she may not have meant it, but in the end, the one who took the victim's life
was Emma Skye. Yeah, that was pretty heavy stuff. I left speechless myself that this game would in fact go this dark with this story. It's been a pretty dark story altogether. The themes have been rather heavy about police corruption and, you know, the miscarriage of justice, all of that like stuff. It's been a pretty heavy ride, but this is really heavy. I feel like this is Gant talking here, because that Worthy is so That's something he'd say, so I'm gonna give the voice, to do the Gant voice for this line. Hopefully I'm right.
Seaworthy? Can't say I didn't warn you.
There he is, yeah.
Chief Gant!
Do you understand the implications of what you've done?
What? What are you talking about?
2 years ago, Joe Dark was sentenced to death. He was convicted because of his final murder. I believe you were the prosecutor in the case, were you not?
Ooh, that's when he's got that evil look. I don't feel great. But I totally see where he's going to, and it is not a good look for Edgeworth.
Yes, Worthy. Because of you, an innocent man was sentenced to death. Not only that, but you used forged evidence to ensure his conviction.
But Joe Dark really was a serial murderer. That's undeniable.
I'm afraid that's not important. Didn't you know? We aren't defenders of justice.
What?
We're merely keepers of the law. Sentencing a man to death is no light matter. Even if there wasn't any cover-up or evidence forgery, ultimately the responsibility falls on the prosecutor in charge. Despite what anyone may say, this fact cannot be denied.
What's going on at the prosecutor's office?
They might have sent an innocent man to his death.
How could he just stand there like it wasn't his fault?
Order! 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 Order!
My goodness. And freaking Gant stepping in at right the moment to, like, drive that point home. So, is this all part of some insane master plan of his? Like, he somehow wants to get rid of Edgeworth as well, and now he's basically doing it by showing that, you know, he miscarried justice and led to death for a person, you know. And man, it's so good because even I'm confused now. I'm not sure if Joe Dark was a serial killer at all, you know, like I've been saying, and I don't know. Of course, I should have thought about it before, that, like, honestly, an innocent man went to death, if my theory was correct, was sent to die. Wow. Jesus, this story. Oy. I'm freaking out, man. I'm freaking out! It's so dark. The gavel's pounding fell on deaf ears. Unable to settle the crowd, the judge declared a recess. Where this trial is headed, no one knows. Yikes, to be continued in the middle of a freaking trial? This is insanity, this case. I cannot deny it. Let's freaking carry on, shall we? Of course, if we can somehow get back to the current murder case, you know, the one that just happened, Bruce Goodman, we can still totally slap down the 7777777 thing that connects to Damon Gant, which is kind of a big deal, although I guess he will pull the card.
Oh no, that's not my key. That's just my key code. That's not my ID number.
But surely we'll be able to eventually look up what his actual ID number is, yes? I'd assume so. So, he can't keep that ruse up forever. Alright, well, we'll see. We'll see where this all goes, shall we?